Well, welcome back, everybody. My name is Rachel Seidensticker, and I am the COO over at Tax Sale Resources. And you're here at Tax Sale Insiders, which is our podcast that we put out there for you to learn a little more about what's going on in the tax lien and tax deed industry. We like to tailor this to investors specifically. And I have my brother, Brian Seidensticker, who's the CEO here at
Hi,
Tax Sale
everybody.
Resources. And we've been doing a lot of interviews and we're going to have a lot more to come. But today we're going to be talking about ways in which you can purchase property before it actually goes to the auction, which is a little different for us. And so kind of wanted to pick your brain to see what you knew about this subject. And I will start with a giant disclaimer. We are not attorneys. We are not experts. We like to think we know a little about a lot of things in this industry, and we definitely know, how to get you in the right direction, push the right direction, and things to consider. But I want to be sure that we're being very careful about don't use this for legal advice. So,
Very good disclaimer. Yeah,
yeah.
we are not attorneys. Rachel's not one. I'm not one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, my knowledge in I call a front running space, which would be trying to purchase properties before the auction, is limited because I have no experience doing it. Only thing I have is listening to folks that are pursuing it and maybe what their goal is, and in some regards, it's a it's just the natural evolution of competition, right? Of in the past few years, the competition at deed auctions has been extremely competitive. In some areas, even crazy. Some would say crazy, right? Why are people buying properties for more than the worth at a tax deed auction, right? I don't even have insurable title, right? So I think it's just natural for people to try and find the edge, and one of those edges has been this front running concept. So
So let's
anyway.
talk about that. What does this mean? What does it mean to buy a tax delinquent property before the auction, and how does it even work?
Yeah, and just that's the term I use, is called front renting. It's just again trying to purchase properties before the auction occurs. The concept is this, right? Is if the property has delinquent taxes, then potentially it's owned by somebody that may be motivated to sell their property, right? And depending on the states, right, if they can recover anything, right, the property owner may be assuming that if it goes to a tax sale, I lose the property, and I don't get anything back from it. Now, reality is in most states, there's the ability to get what's called the overage back. The excess of what was due to the county is then due back to the previous owner. But that's not something that constituents are educated on. Taxpayers are educated on, so most likely they don't know that. But anyway, the concept is to reach out to those homeowners to see if they would be interested in selling their property, and then the investors essentially purchasing that property as a regular purchase, right? But it has to occur before that auction takes place, and ensure that those taxes are paid before the auction takes place. It essentially redeems the property before the auction ever takes place. That's the whole concept of the front running. And then it comes down to, how do you find those people, right? How do you communicate with those people? And that would be more of the secret sauce that I'm not necessarily privy to. The only thing that we have is a list of the properties that are going to an auction, and so we have, I guess, say the starting point of trying to identify which properties to then figure out who owns that property, and then how do you get in touch with that owner.
Yeah, we have the owner and mailing address, right? So it's a start.
Correct.
So it's a start of something. What are benefits to this sort of investment process?
Well, I think there's two benefits, right? Depending on how you structure it, right? One benefit is if you're the only one doing it in that particular area, there's no competition, right? You're not bidding, right? If you went to the auction. So there's certainly that's an advantage. And the other one is if you purchase it, in a traditional transaction, you're getting title insurance on that property, versus if you went to the auction, more than likely you're not getting title insurance on that property. So it eliminates that headache and having to deal with that, post auction as well. And so there's certainly advantages if you can get into them. It's just a matter of having the conversation with the right person and actually getting a sale to take place.
Okay. And conversely, how about those negatives? There's got to be some. Always is, right?
Well, and trust me, there's plenty, right? One is a timeline, right? And depending on where you get that information from, right? For us, right, we collect the tax sale list, produce the data roughly 4 weeks before the auction, so you're on a 4-week time frame, right? And so you've got to basically make an offer, get accepted, get it. If you do it with title insurance with the title company and close, right, and still give the title company enough time to redeem the property, pay the taxes to avoid the sale. So you're on a timeline, a very, very tight timeline. Now might be a little different than it was a couple of years ago, but I would say a couple of years ago, you would have to have a very good special relationship with the title company in order to get something across the finish line in a 4-week period, right? It was usually 45 days or longer. Now maybe it's a little shorter, but I can tell you it's still not normal, to get a property, through the sale and closing process in less than 30 days. That's one of the biggest disadvantages. The second big, huge disadvantage is how do you get in touch with folks, right? You could certainly find, take the auction list, right, and go find the current property owner, right, and their mailing address as part of the data. But that doesn't always, or I'd say, not everybody's going to respond to that type of communication. So then it comes down to, well, how do I get in touch with that previous owner? And that's where the secret sauce of some of these folks that maybe are successful and how they're doing that. It's called skip tracing, right? Because sending something in the mail, although is a method, typically the people that are struggling to pay the taxes on that property are not necessarily wanting to be contacted, right, at the end of the day. And so there's a lot of hurdles you got to get over in order to try and to make that happen. Now, if you can get all the way to the end and then you happen to get in touch with that person, then it's now you're negotiating a purchase, right, not knowing if you're going to be able to get it all done. So trust me, there's plenty of disadvantages right there, but there's several advantages if you can make it all work. And so if you've got the secret sauce or think you have the secret sauce, is it worth pursuing? I've heard large success stories of it being working. I don't have any personally, but is it a method that might be worth pursuing? Well, if you're planning on attending an auction in, I'll use Dallas, Texas, the competition is going to be crazy, right? So is this a method of trying to get into those properties before that auction occurs? Maybe the only way to get into those properties. But I could probably tell you there's probably a few other people that have thought of that too. And so the competition there is going to be crazy.
So do you think that this is something that is done more in lien states, deed states, redeemable deed? Is there any advantages to any of the state over another?
Well, as far as I'm aware, the people pursue that in the deed auction states because, typically if a homeowner, understands that even if that lien is sold at auction, they still have the right to redeem it for multiple years. Are they going to be selling it to, selling the whole property to somebody at a huge discount? Maybe, right? And the truth is, I don't know. I've never done it. But versus if the property owner were to call the county and the county says, no, that property, you're going to lose your ownership as of that date, like a tax deed auction, then maybe the motivation, might be higher in those tax deed auctions. Again, I don't know. I haven't pursued either model. But if I were to make an assumption, I would say the deed auctions would be a little more successful.
Okay. And why would a homeowner go down this road? And why is this option more attractive to a homeowner?
Well, it really comes down. It comes down to if they have the ability to negotiate what that sale price is, right, versus leaving it up to the auction, in a potential sale price, right? I think most people would like to have that control, right, and like to be able to know that you're getting a some sort of funds at the end of the day. And so I think there's a lot of advantages to the homeowner, for sure, right? More than just letting it go to auction, because If you let it go to auction, even though you have the right to submit a form, right, and getting that overage, right, you have that right, but that's still a process you have to go through, right, and you're still leaving that in the hands of somebody else versus being able to have the control over that purchase price when it closes. And in the most part, the people that the homeowners that are going to go through that are they want to sell the property, right. Very, very rarely is this the owner that's living in the property, right. Typically it's maybe an heir to the property, or somebody that didn't know they even owned that property, or an heir to this, somebody that didn't know they owned that property. And so if you're able to connect with those folks and negotiate a sale, typically that property owner is probably pretty happy with the fact that, hey, I didn't even know this was happening. Thanks for highlighting it to me. I'd love to sell it. It's not something I want anyway. Otherwise I would have paid the taxes, right? Is kind of the moral of the story.
Okay. What do you think an investor can expect in the form of competition?
Oh, I'm gonna have to plead the fifth on that one, or that's not the right term, but I have no idea.
Okay.
I have not pursued this. I know it's become much more prevalent in the last few years. Again, as I'd say, natural evolution for the competition at the auctions, and because it's something that is being taught, out there. I'd say there's going to be some competition, but is it going to be as crazy as maybe the competition is at the tax deed auctions directly? Probably not, because it is a much more specialized approach.
Gotcha. Okay. And do you have any kind of quick general steps on how you would find and buy delinquencies before the auction?
Well, I guess a shameless plug for that is what we do, right? Is we collect the auction list. We at least can give front runners the starting point. Here's a list of delinquent properties, right? And then it's up to them to figure out how to connect with that property owner, and negotiate the deal. But at any given moment, we process about 1.2 million delinquencies a year through our platform, and so there's plenty of starting points to work with.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, and then it's a matter of, you said there's a script, there's gonna have to be some sort of skip tracing process to find out those owners.
Yep.
And how to get a hold of them. So, well, great. I think that is at least an overview for folks. As we mentioned, and Brian mentioned, I mentioned, we're not experts in this area, but we have heard enough about it. We've touched it a little bit, and have heard from people that they wanted to know more. So we're giving you what information that we have to give. And as always, consult an attorney and make sure that what you're doing in your state is legal, and following the letter of the law. So. Thanks, Brian, again for joining us. That wraps up another session of Tax Sale Insiders, and we'll certainly have you back again, I'm sure, with many other topics that we can address. So thank you.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome. And for all of you out there, happy investing. Thanks for joining us. And be sure to check us out. We're out on YouTube, we're Facebook. We've got our blog. We have our podcast on taxsaleresources.com. So be sure to take a look and check us out. Thanks again.
Good luck, everybody.